Hello, hello. Long time no see. Hope you're well. Yeah, today is actually Tuesday, and it's one of those days when we've decided to do a makeup show. First of all, my name is African Queen Mo, coming to you from the beautiful city of Nairobi. And I'm coming, first of all, with an apology to say sorry that we haven't been online for, I think, three shows so far. But welcome anyway. I do have another job, and trying to find time between that job and this one, coming to you live, is sometimes a little bit tricky, especially when it refers to somebody who is vulnerable. So let us go ahead and do our makeup show. On Mondays we usually do the Kenya politics show. On Wednesdays we do geopolitics, and on Fridays we actually have just a relationship show. And on Sundays, we have mental health. Yeah. So support us. Remember to thumbs up and join us in the comment section. You can find us on StreamYard. And if you look in the comment section, you'll actually see the link. You can come on there and, type up whatever you want to say. I come to you today together with my colleague, Susan, who is going to be joining us. She's a lawyer and I'm an evaluator. And basically, I'm also just a basic Kenyan citizen as well, a concerned citizen who decides to use my platform for public participation and also for entertainment, yeah, and knowledge and learning. So today we're going to talk about Kenyan politics. Whether you're going to watch us on the live show or whether you're going to watch the recording version, please remember to thumbs up and to subscribe to our channel. Okay, I think I've done the basics. So first of all, what's happening in Kenya? I'm telling you, I like to also relate to you from my own experience. Just this week, I've had a good opportunity to drive down to town a couple of times. To be honest, it's like my first time to actually get into the city center, CBD area. Over the last, 1 year, I really haven't been going down. But from when you start, when you start going into Nairobi city center, it's like a drug. It's like you can't stop. You have to keep going and going and going. It's addictive because of the vibe of the city center. Nairobi city center is fun, it's vibrant. People are walking around, there's so many young people. And anywhere where there's young people, there's a vibe. There's definitely a vibration going on there. Yeah. And before I continue, I want to make sure that you're hearing me. And yeah, because sometimes what happens, I actually record and then people can't even hear me. But anyway, assuming that you're hearing me. So I went into town a couple of times. And every time I went into town, I went deeper and deeper into the town. First, I started where I felt that I was going to be safe, just around the basic city center, just at the front. And then I went to the very back. And that is when I started to see the real Nairobi, the real truth of what's going on back there, guys. And it is not a very pleasant sight because one of the things you notice is that there's a lot of people who are jobless, young men just hanging around doing nothing. And, in such environments, you know very well that you're a target. And they know who's new in town because obviously there's some people who basically occupy specific parts of the city center. And if they see new faces, they obviously know, that you're there. But I quickly went into survival mode and I picked up on my speed and looking around and making sure that everybody knew that I was there. Sometimes what happens is that um you want to try to hide away, but the best thing to do when you're in such a place, be flamboyant so that people can see you, make a big fuss, stop somewhere, buy something. Like I was buying from the vendors just, on the streets, buy something from people so that way you also start to create some goodwill. They become your friends on the streets and they see that you're supporting their businesses and they will be there to defend you if anything was to go wrong, in town. So basically that's what happened. And I found that Nairobi has really, yeah, I can see that you can hear me. I found that Nairobi has really changed. One of the things, of course, apart from the fact that it's hot and dusty, and boy isn't it hot and dusty right now. Apart from that, though, I found that Nairobi has grown a lot. There's so many new buildings. And one of the things that really surprised me is how easy it is to rent a stall in Nairobi right now. In fact, if you go around Koja Mosque area, if you look up, for those of you guys who know Nairobi well, around Koja, and you look up on the buildings, it says 11,500 shillings per stall with only 2 months deposit and 1 month's rent. You know what that means? It just basically means that there's no business, because there was a time, maybe I would say 5 years ago, just before COVID, where those tolls you had to pay what they call goodwill of millions in order to get a tiny little space in town. You'd have to pay like 1 million, 500,000 just to get a little shop. And that goodwill comes with nothing, literally. It's just the idea of occupying space. But now there they are begging people to rent stalls in town. If you have a good business idea and you want space in Nairobi city center, this is the time. This is the time to go to town and get yourself a space, because they are really quite reasonable. 11,500 in the central business district. That is very cheap. That's approximately, it's less than $100 a month. It's probably something like $80 a month. Yeah. So when I went to town, I was really shocked. I was really shocked. So, but one of the good things though is I saw the tenacity, the resolve of Kenyans. Kenyans are determined to make it until they break it. I mean, those guys, Kenyans, the people who have been in those stores, they're still selling. They're still standing behind there, whether there are customers or there are none. I went into some of the shops that are owned by Indians, Asians, the Kenyan Indians, and they told me that they close early because there are very few customers. So, no point of hanging around town. So, they open maybe at 8 o'clock, maybe they close at 3 o'clock. So, if you come there around 4 or 5 o'clock, you won't find anyone. Yeah. But I've also seen a lot of videos where people are complaining that many malls are empty. Some of the malls in Kambut town area, they're empty, and beautiful, beautiful malls. You wonder, why do people build malls? One of the things they don't realize is that, like in the US, a lot of malls were built and now they're being converted into apartments. So that's beside the point. Today, we're going to be talking about what's happening in Kenya. And basically, we're going to bring you a little bit of politics, a little bit of business, and other things. But I think one of the things I like to start with is positives. Let's talk about the positives right now. Okay, I started with a bit of negative, but let's talk about what the news is saying. If you go into the news, you actually find that there's so many job advertisements. Like, let me bring up one. Kenya's Civil Aviation Authority announces top management job openings. How to apply, How to apply for the Kenya Civil Aviation. Another one. Kenya Commercial Bank, KCB Bank, advertises several jobs, including managerial positions for Kenyans in March 2025. Okay. And they're saying that the bank, Kenya Commercial Bank, wants to recruit qualified, interested candidates as top managers and customer service officers. All qualified and interested candidates must submit their applications on or before Friday, March 21st. And another one. Kenyatta University Referral Hospital advertises jobs for nurses and other positions. Kenyatta University Teaching Referral and Research Hospital has invited Kenyans to apply for 21 vacant positions. Okay, so all of these, so those are three. That's KCB, Jomo Kenyatta Referral Hospital, and also the Kenya Civil Aviation Authority. Those are four. Okay. And on and on and on. I also saw Safaricom was also offering jobs. There are job opportunities with Safaricom. They're advertising them, and so it's quite interesting to hear people say that there are no jobs, and yet there are so many companies that are actually advertising positions and offering opportunities for Kenyans to work in their industry. So before I continue, I also want to invite Susan to join me on the stream. I can see her here. Welcome, Susan.
Hello, everybody. Hi,
Hi, Susan.
Queen.
It's long time no see. Karibu sana. Yes. Nice to see you. Anyway, so yeah, like let's continue kidogo here, and then before we bring Susan on board. But anyway, that's Susan. So yeah, so basically, what's happening is, are we talking about a false economy, or is it true that is it that there are no jobs, or is it that there are jobs? Yeah. Meanwhile, Kenyans are also being given tips on visas, the 5 visa options for Kenyans seeking jobs in Germany, and the requirements. And there are 5, so there are so many people. This gentleman called Elijah Ntongai, he's a journalist with Tuko. He has given some information. He's providing some guidance, on the Germany having recently introduced significant immigration reforms aimed at attracting skilled workers from non-European Union countries. So basically, we're just being encouraged. Young people are being encouraged to go find work in Germany and other countries like that. And the question is, what are young people supposed to believe? What are they supposed to, because what I do know is that many people all over the world, in fact, even on TikTok, you see, many people are complaining that they are applying for jobs and they're not getting called for them. Yeah. And the question is, why not? Why not? So, on the business scene, meanwhile, let's talk about the fact that in the Kinangop, Kenya is a very big dairy producer. I think it's the second largest dairy producer in Africa, following South Africa. Kenya is next, and there's this big dairy called the Kinangop Dairy, and it's actually expanding, and they are expanding with 5 different flavors of yogurt. Yogurt is something that a lot of Kenyans have started to drink, I've noticed, including myself. And they've introduced new flavors, and they say that they are responding to customer requirements or customer requests. They talk about the flavors of pineapple yogurt, pineapple, vanilla, strawberry, lemon biscuit, chocolate yogurt. Sounds really lovely. I'll tell you what. And the other thing that they're introducing is probiotics. One of the biggest problems that we have, according to a nutritionist that I talked to, is a growth of colon cancer. And partly this has got to do with the digestive system. And probiotics are known, to help the digestive system. And one of the best sources of probiotics is actually fermented milk products. So, and cheeses and things like that. And also, by the way, cabbage, believe it or not, has probiotics. So the fact that yogurt, Kenyans are becoming more and more aware about what they should be eating, is actually driving demand, yeah, for these kinds of food. So it's nice to see that at least there's a little bit of good news here, that there are businesses that are expanding while others are contracting. So you see, with the economy, we have the formal economy and we have the informal economy. And usually what happens is that when we're talking about the economy, usually when people are actually discussing the economy, they're talking about the formal economy. But we forget that there's also the informal economy, for example, where when these yogurts are produced by the formal economy that pays taxes to the government, they're usually distributed by people who are small scale traders. And many of them maybe will be distributing to schools, to school children, to hospitals and places like that. And some of them may or may not be paying taxes, but the fact is that they are helping to circulate the money in the economy that way by producing, by manufacturing. So it's nice to see Kenyans actually producing something, because really we are a net importer. Yeah. So I think, I'll allow Susan to come in and say something at this point, because before I continue, but generally I just wanted to give you a little bit of synopsis. That was a little bit about the business scene, and also a little bit about the job scene, and also talking about what I actually saw in this central business district with my own eyes. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's quite an interesting scenario actually, but not unexpected as a result of what we're seeing in the economy. Despite the glowing midterm report that was published by Kenya Kwanza government, the effects in the pocket of Kenyans, and we've said this in several shows, is not being felt. And they're saying they don't understand how you can say the inflation is this way, and we'd expect to have at least some money, but we're not feeling it. And it has something to do with, and the big question is, they say statistics don't lie, but I think what we're coming to find out, or what listening to pundits and politicians talking about the issue, is that there's always a story behind the statistics. And sometimes we see the result without really understanding its effect. But when you ask the people who are interacting in that space, the answer will be very different from what the result is giving, which is perhaps why evaluators look at both the uh, quantitative and qualitative aspects, because for the quantitative is the numbers and the qualitative is the behavior change. How is it impacting your life? And so what has happened with their policies is that um, although on paper some of them the results may look positive, it's not being felt by Kenyans, which means the qualitative effects are not there. Most Kenyans are because of, and because of, there are a number of things which have impacted that, is that the money, the value of the money is not working for us. So the money is not doing its job. uh, People's salaries have not changed over time, and that is a sign of stagnation, because people's salaries have not changed. In fact, I listened um, I listened to a video where they were talking about, this lady was lamenting, and she's closed down her business now, and she said it's even worse than it was during COVID. So she's not been able to recover at all. And this is somebody who has literally closed down her business. She went through COVID, survived the COVID period, but in this season now, she's unable to continue. The money she's earning is doing less than it was doing in the past. And that has something to do with, and this is interesting thing about the GDP reports, is that it doesn't tell you who has the money. So the people who have the money, it's like a false reading in terms of the statistics. They're sort of it's sort of, they have so much money, and some people don't have any money. So it's showing that we are doing better than we are. But the Kenyans, I mean, seeing the poverty level, I think it's gone up to 39%. So there are about 20 million Kenyans living below the poverty line now. And in fact, we've been talking about the disappearing middle class, and it's because of the same thing. People depending now on short-term loans, the TALAP and the M-Pesa and all those things, because they don't have the money to cover their basic needs. And the basic needs, in fact, the TALA did a survey. TALA, I think if you go on your phone, you'll see it. And it's a short-term credit lender. And they talked about food, education, rent, and rent being the basic drivers as to why people are taking these short-term loans, which and health, right? It shows you that people are borrowing to just meet their basic needs. It's not for anything extra. People are not able to buy. So we are producing, but we're not consuming. So there might be production, but there's nobody to buy, because we don't have the money to buy those things. And that's how they're staying in the shop and they're not being bought. Even though they say the price is coming down, the value of that money is not able to cover that cost. The value of the money that we have is not able to cover that cost. I don't know how many people can say that they had a salary increment in the past year or something like that. I think there are very few people who have experience that difference. So the impact of the economy is really the economy not being run very well. A governance issue is what is really pushing Kenyans down, and that's why you're seeing them disaffected by perhaps the Ruto-Raila agreement, because they're not seeing how it's really different from any other agreement and how it's going to change their lives. They're seeing that this relationship is self-serving. It's a political decision. It has nothing to do with the wananchi. It has something to do with enabling the elite and the politicians to continue to grow richer and control Kenyans more. Yeah, I've finished.
I was really listening, very keenly, Susan. It's so true, People are disaffected. I like that word, disaffected. They're not affected. They don't feel the impact. They don't feel the benefits. They don't see the benefits of this so-called broad-based handshake government. They're not calling it a handshake anyway. Yeah. So in the meantime, in other news, yeah, I want to share with you that the United States has issued a travel advisory to citizens in Kenya, citing crime, terrorism, and kidnapping risks. Think about that. This is March 18th. That is actually today. United States has advised its citizens to reconsider traveling to areas such as Kibera and Isili. And Kibera is in Nairobi over here. It's the largest they call informal settlement south of the sub-Sahara Africa. And then we have Isli. Isli is actually part of Eastlands, and that is actually where everybody goes shopping. Although there's a very big Muslim community, a big Somali community, but they are known to actually have very goods with very good prices, and a lot of Kenyans go there shopping every single day, and they're advertising every single day on social media. Yeah. But the United States government, in a statement dated Tuesday, March 18th, that is today, cited crime, terrorism, and kidnapping risks as reasons for urging its citizens to exercise caution. So the US is actually predicting that, or urging its citizens to exercise caution when visiting the country. And Isli is too close to Nairobi. It's strange that they would actually issue a warning to Kenya. The question is, what do they really know? Because what we've seen typically is that the advisory would be against traveling to border counties, such as, those bordering Somalia, such as Garissa, Wajir, Mandera, or the coast, Malindi, Lamu. But it's very rare to hear them, give a travel advisory against, city area, the city spaces, which is actually worrisome, not just for the Americans. It should be also worrisome to Kenyans as well. So they're cautioning against banditry and things like that. And they're talking about, they're also saying that violent crimes such as armed carjacking and mugging, home invasions and kidnapping can occur at any time. And this is associated with what Susan was talking about, the economy. Yeah, and that is how I felt when I went to town. For some reason, I felt that I might become a victim of violent crime, carjacking or mugging, or not quite kidnapping, but I felt like I might be pickpocketed or I might be hurt in town, because you can just see on the faces of people the desperation, you know, and the fact that you see that the police. They are saying that the local police cannot often respond effectively to serious crimes and terrorist attacks. Emergency medical and fire services are limited. This is what the US is saying. Emergency medical and fire services limited, so avoid traveling after dark in Kenya. So, when they mention that the local police cannot often respond effectively to serious crimes and terrorist attacks, what does that really mean? Especially now that the police are not able to access services such as health services. And when you hear that the military have been asked to purchase their own food, you wonder to yourself, what is the government of America actually trying to say? And they go to the point where they even describe, in detail how these violent attackers might block key intersections on highways, resulting in widespread traffic jams, and how this violence during demonstrations have occurred during the country. But it could also be probably triggered by the fact that recently a government convoy, the convoy of the president, his convoy, actually hit a pedestrian who is a foreigner, a national, I believe, of the Netherlands. And he was 79 years old, supposed to be an altruistic man, somebody who was helping the community. I think he was probably crossing the road, but he was hit in a hit and run by one of the cars in the convoy. And maybe this has resulted in maybe them feeling a little bit unsafe. Again, we also saw a situation where there was a foreign national who was abducted and unalived in Kenya recently, and his body found in another part of the country. So I think there's a heightened feeling of insecurity amongst foreigners in Kenya, while we're trying meanwhile to build the security situation in the country, and also trying to build up tourism in the country. So let me show you my screen. Let me share my screen with you and show you the cabinet news. I don't know if you can see my screen. I hope you can. Yes. This is the Cabinet News report of March 11th. That's about a week ago, coming from the State House. And it's actually claiming this is actually President Ruto who chaired the cabinet meeting at the State House. And basically, he announced that the construction of Bomas International Convention Complex will begin in 2 weeks. We heard that the Bomas of Kenya, which is a big cultural building or an institution, it's kind of like it's not quite a government, what do you call it, it's one of these like the Kenya International Conference Center and others, it's kind of like government and also private sector. So Bomas International Convention Complex will begin in 2 weeks, marking a major milestone in the government's plan to transform the facility into a world-class conferencing hub. Okay, we were hearing rumors that Bomas of Kenya was bought. We were hearing rumors that it was going to be transformed into a hotel. And we also saw mention of an Indian man called Adani associated with it. We heard rumors that it was sold to the Turkish. We heard rumors that Adani was going to build hotels at the Bomas of Kenya. And now we're seeing, according to this cabinet news report, that if you see over here, that the construction of the Bomas of Kenya International Convention Complex will begin in a few weeks. That's actually probably in the next week. And the question Kenyans have been asking is why? Why would they take that facility without consulting Kenyans, without public participation? Yeah, so that's one of the things in that cabinet report. Again, they're saying that they're talking about the Talanta Stadium. There's also this Talanta is called the Talanta Hela Stadium at Jamhuri Park, which is actually on Gong Road. It's 40% completed. And it's right opposite from Enkang Properties, which I think I showed you once in one of my videos. Go and look for that. There's a bunch of beautiful apartments there that belong to someone who is very close to me. And I was actually trying to advertise. They're in stage 3 of completing, but the Talanta Hela Stadium is 40% complete. And I've actually noticed on Gong Road, you guys, if you notice, there's a lot of building going on there. There's a lot. I mean, the road is actually being expanded, and you can see that they're really preparing to host the FIFA. No, not the FIFA, the Africa Cup of Nations, AFCON, I think it's called, Africa Cup of Nations. Yeah. So they say the last time that such a huge stadium was built was like 45 years ago, which is comparable to the Moi International Sports Center Kasarani. So Talanta is going to be a big landmark achievement, and they're looking to complete it by 2027, I believe. Yeah. So again, they're talking about, the kind of developments. They're talking about finalizing the construction of the Rironi Mau Summit Road by June 1st this year, 2025. And it's supposed to have been an upgrade from the two-way single carriageway. Again, they're talking, this is projects. These are the developments that are going on in Kenya. For people who have not been in the country, it's interesting. So they're targeting June 2027 for the infrastructure. Again, the cabinet is talking about approving new measures to enhance tourism by improving competitiveness. International arrivals apparently increased by about 14.6% to 2.4 million, generating 452 billion in revenue. That's half a trillion almost half a trillion in revenue from only 2.4 million tourists. Now just imagine if they increased tourism even more than that. We would not be borrowing money, guys. There's one time that tourism was actually the lead earner in the country. And so they're expecting 3 million tourists this year. Yeah, that's an increase of 600,000 tourists from the previous year. And they're hoping that's less than a million. And if you compare really Kenya with other countries like Morocco and other places that literally rely on tourists for, their budgets, I think that we're doing very poorly. We should be doing much, much, much better in the area of tourism. Kenya has a lot to offer. So they're talking about promoting eco-friendly tourism practices, expanding community-based tourism, targeting markets in the US and China, targeting cruise tourism, which they say is up almost 200%. It's actually up 163.5%. This is the cruise tourism. And then they also talk about domestic tourism that is also continuing to thrive. But my view when it comes to tourism is not really about the facilities that you have as much as the environment of the country. If the country feels safe, if the country is clean and there's order, I think a lot of people will come to see, because what Kenya has is natural. You don't have to build anything. Actually, Kenya is naturally beautiful, because I've visited many countries, even in the South Pacific, that have very little infrastructure compared to Kenya, but they get millions of tourists every year just to go and see the wonder of creation. Yeah, the wonder of nature. We have the beautiful animals, we have the big five and others, and we have birds, and we have, beautiful forests and lush trees. We have wonderful people, good food, good climate. So many people would want to escape those long winters just to come to us. But if they think that when they come and they read stories of people like themselves being unalived by hit and run convoys, some of them being abducted and found gone, that kind of environment would scare them, scare tourists. And that's really what I think that the government should really be focusing on, you know, fix what's broken. Yeah, there's no need of actually building anything more, because if anything, Kenya has a lot of infrastructure already built. So I'll stop talking from there. I think I've spoken a lot. But just to show you that there's that cabinet document that came up on March 11th, and this is what they're talking about. This is what the so it's so positive. It sounds so beautiful and so positive. I'd like to hear from Susan what she feels about it.
Yeah,
And you guys, if you want to
definitely.
discuss, please feel free to discuss in the StreamYard and chat. And I'll also invite people in on Twitter and on my Facebook as well. Cheers.
Yeah, definitely what we're seeing is that it's really important to understand the context of any statement in terms of whether it's doing well or not. And just even from the midterm report that the Kenya Kwanza government released. So it's really important to get the finer details about who is actually benefiting from all the changes and stuff like that. Just talking about violence, you mentioned it. I came across an article by somebody called Isaac Kalua Green. It was published in Sunday, March 16th Standard. And he talks about a report called the Africa Youth Leadership Forum, saying the Africa Youth Leadership Forum released a report entitled Understanding the Status of Youth Participation in Key Government Areas. And the what it was really saying is that the violence in our streets is not the problem; it is a symptom. It is a symptom. And let's empower our youth or watch them fight against a broken system. So basically, they picked up a number of things, the five of them. The first is that youth participation in governance remains dismal. They're not good. They're not really engaged. We know that they don't really, in the past, our experience in the past is they've not really participated in voting. I think people have gone to the polling stations and left their adult children at home, at least of that generation of Gen Z or millennial. So they're not really, they're not engaged in governance. And they constitute 73% of our population, and they're not engaged, and 85% of them feel unrepresented, and the few MCAs who are youth don't engage their constituents. The second point is that political apathy from the youth and disengagement are growing concerns. So they're not engaged, and there's political apathy. That we saw, that we've seen, and we know it. 65% do not belong to any political party, and because they cite corruption and or lack of trust in the system. As we said, the Gen Zs in particular and millennials do not like being lied to. So if you don't tell them the truth, you are in problems. You can see from the Ruto must go. If you watch some of the videos where he's talking when he has done this, this tour in Nairobi and wherever, he says something and then they shout to Wongo. He says something, then they shout to Wongo. There are videos like that, he says some Wongo. And those the people who are there mostly are youth. The people who are there are youth in those type of gatherings. Then the 57% have never received voter registration education, and while 88% plan to vote. Well, with that's great. At least 88% plan to vote. Let's see whether we'll see that result in 2027. And
How
of
will they
course, that
vote though?
issue,
Because of the ID cards. The ID cards
yeah,
are delayed. That's one of
yeah,
the really worrisome things.
they need to start applying for them because applying for registering as a voter doesn't require the commissioners. It needs
They
the
have applied,
secretariat.
Susan. If you're not aware, these people have applied starting last year. They still haven't received their IDs. The IDs are just
Yeah,
delayed. Yeah, they're
and yes,
delayed.
unfortunate,
Yeah.
very, very, very unfortunate. Yeah. So they're disillusioned basically because of the issues of unfulfilled and unmet needs. They can see that government is not doing what it should be doing, so they say, "Why should I bother anyway? It's not going to make a difference." So that change of mind needs to be that encouraging them to take that position because your vote is one of the most powerful ways you can be heard. And the third one is corruption and fear of corruption and fear of reporting are deeply embedded. We know that we people who have been compelled to be corrupt because of circumstances beyond their control. They're calling it citing survival and normalized bribery. We know that we know the situation in some situations where you can see the expectations that you have to bribe. It's almost you know what you call entitlement. That you have to pay something for services which should be rendered without you being asked for anything. So 14% of them admit that they have had to bribe people, although 87% deny engaging in corruption. So we know that it's actually 87% not engaging in corruption. That figure is high, and probably it should be lower, and more of them should be saying, yes, we've had to bribe for this or that. We know it's happening everywhere. Then 56% know corrupt individuals but fear reporting them. And we know that to be the reality. If young people see corruption as survival, isn't Kenya's moral fabric unraveling? And I thought that was quite a disturbing statement, that if people see corruption as a way to survive, these young people, the ones who are the ones robbing the motor, wananchi, if they see um, corruption as survival, what does it say about our moral fabric? They're
Yep.
completely desensitized to it. They're completely
Mm-hmm.
desensitized to it. The fourth
Mm-hmm.
one is limited civic education and awareness of the Constitution disconnect youth from governance, while 34% uh, read the Constitution only when necessary. 28% have never read it. Um, Furthermore, 73% believe that the Office of the Registrar of Political Parties does not educate citizens about political parties. So that would explain perhaps why they're not in any political party. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and we know the structure of political parties. It's still, the truth is they're still along tribal lines, still along regional lines. Let me put it regional because it could be where you see there's it's usually along regional lines. If you live in Mombasa, you tend to support the more dominant party in that region. If you're
Mm-hmm.
living in Nairobi, there usually, there are many more. I think Nairobians are quite exposed. Maybe in the cities, even Nakuru, perhaps as well, you might have that. But when you go into the regions, you find them supporting the party that is dominant in that region. Um, then we have um, uh, the fifth one is barriers to youth representation continue to hinder progress. Hello?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
but policies designed to uplift youth largely remain unknown. Over 60% lack knowledge of any youth policies enacted by the counties, which is really
Yeah.
sad.
Yeah. I wanted, yeah, Susan, talking about corruption. Yeah, there's this, yeah, there's Thika Chief Magistrate Stella Atambo. Okay, have you heard about her situation? Yeah, the High Court stopped the EACC, Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission, the Directorate of Public Prosecution, that is the DPP, from arresting a magistrate accused of taking bribes. So, look, if a magistrate can be protected, okay, by the High Court, if the High Court can stop the Ethics and Anti Corruption Commission and the Directorate of Public Prosecution from arresting a magistrate accused of taking bribes, where are we heading as a country, honestly? This lady, Stella Atambo, was accused by the Ethics and Anti Corruption Commission of obtaining bribes to determine cases in her jurisdiction. And last week, the East African, no, so the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission officials raided her home, where they found 2 million shillings believed to be proceeds of crime. All right, but one way or another, she secured orders stopping her imminent arrest and prosecution. Okay, so she's basically being termed as the embattled Thika Chief Magistrate, Stella Atambo. So she got that reprieve from after the High Court issued temporary orders stopping the DPP and the EACC from arresting and prosecuting her. All right. So the judge Chacha Muita made the ruling on Monday, March 17th. That's yesterday, after the magistrate filed a petition challenging the legality of the case against her. Yeah. So that's it. It's really amazing, you guys. How corruption. This is the thing. Corruption has very deep roots and it spreads very wide. If even the institutions that are supposed to be protecting the constitution, defending the constitution, cannot defend it and make sure that everybody is equal under the law, well, what do you expect? And these are the kinds of things that I'm saying that actually can dissuade a lot of people from investing in our country and can stop Kenya from actually progressing. Because if the courts can actually be bribed this way, anyway. So now let's move over to diplomacy, guys. I wanted to talk about diplomacy. You saw recently the hot story about this lady. Her name is Margaret Nduta. I don't know whether you guys know about this lady called Margaret Nduta. She actually ended up traveling to Vietnam to look for work. And unfortunately, somehow or the other, she found herself having been peddling drugs to the country. And right now, she's actually facing execution. She's supposed to have been executed, I believe, yesterday or today. Kenyans have been crying out against it and, really begging online on TikTok, asking the governments, the relevant offices and officials to get involved. And Kenya, I saw they sent a group of diplomats. Let's just see the diplomats over to Vietnam. Let's just see whether or not, to what extent, we will be successful. Because I think Kenya's diplomacy, unfortunately, doesn't have a very good history. Yeah. Let me share my screen so that you can at least see her picture on here. Let me share it. Share screen. Margaret Nduta, Vietnam. Here she is. This is the lady, Margaret Nduta, Vietnam. The law and the Kenyan dilemma. There she is, that lady. And I know that her mother has been really affected. And they're saying that in the next round of hours, a family in an area in Kenya called Moranga may lose their daughter. And in a way, no one in the household could ever had imagined, not in a million years, how she was going to lose her life. Yeah. So right now, the government, is basically the Kenyans have tried to rally the government around this issue, around her cause, and petitioning the government to intervene and avert her death penalty. But Vietnam apparently has very, very serious laws, and they say that they also affect their own people, and so Kenya is no exception. And apparently, she was busted with 2 kilos of cocaine, which she ended up carrying on behalf of, I believe, the agent who sent her. Yeah, I don't know whether it's the agent or who it was. Yeah. So there's nominated MPs, who are trying to come in, and they're saying that there should be a committee to reach out to the ministry. I believe it's the Foreign Affairs Ministry to try to intervene. Uh, the Speaker of the National Assembly, Moses Wetangula, directed the Defense Intelligence and Foreign Relations Committee to intervene, directing the committee Vice Chair Bashir Abdullah to get in touch with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs regarding the case. So that the government is coming along, but only under a lot of pressure, yeah, from Kenyans. And now Kenyans want to know what is her situation, because by 7 p.m. on Sunday, Kenyans had started to properly wake up to the morbid reality of her sentencing, with many flooding X or Twitter, and also flooding TikTok, by the way. I saw a lot of that. And there were very many members of parliament and MPs trying to secure her release. But we don't really know where that is really taking us. But let's just see, let's just hope, let's pray that, her life is actually spared, because it would be really sad to lose a life. Yeah. So that's where we are diplomatically with the Margaret Nduta case. I believe this issue of people traveling without understanding what it really means to carry things. She was asked if she could carry a parcel, and she said, "Yeah, sure, no problem." Trying to be a nice Kenyan, that I'm going to carry it. You don't even know what you're being told to carry, and you're saying yes. Before you travel anywhere, Kenyans or anybody from Africa, think twice. Never, ever, ever in your life carry anything for anyone. Do not do it unless you know the person and you know exactly what it is you're carrying and you've opened it and you can see it. Not something that is enclosed. You don't even know what you're carrying. Yeah. So that is where we are with diplomacy. I don't know. I think Susan might want to have to say something about that particular case if she's. Oh, she dropped off the stage. Karibu, Susan. When did you drop off? I thought you just took a
Yeah.
break.
Um,
Okay.
um, yeah, on the issue, I was listening to somebody who was doing an analysis and saying it's actually a very layered and complex issue. Um,
Mm-hmm.
there's been four approaches. One is legal. We know that she's gone through the trial. We know that she traveled and she was arrested in Vietnam, and she has been through a trial, and she's
Yeah, and that
been
was in 2023, wasn't it? It was a while back.
yeah, and she was
Margaret
convicted.
Dutat. Yeah.
Yeah,
Mm.
she was convicted and sentenced to death by lethal injection. And of course, Kenya were seeking a stay, um, because our system doesn't allow for, we don't have capital punishment in Kenya. So they're trying to negotiate for her to, uh, to be allowed to come, to be released into Kenya custody, and then she'll serve her sentence here, because we are protesting, in the event that she's actually is guilty. We are protesting the unaliving, because we don't do it in Kenya. We find many countries doing the same thing when their nationals are convicted and a death sentence. They actually do try to intervene at various levels. So we've tried it politically. Apparently, the presidents, former number 3 and 4, that's Uhuru and the current president. Apparently, Uhuru knows the current president of Vietnam. Is not really a president. I've forgotten his status, what he's called, but the leader. Um, they had a chat, and they said they were considering, they would consider the request to stay the execution. And then, of course, there was the diplomatic foray, where the envoys from Thailand were sent. We do not have a diplomatic office. We do not have an embassy in Vietnam. So we have one in Thailand, which serves the whole of Southeast Asia. So they were sent to address the issue diplomatically. And then, of course, there's a lot of social pressure on the social networks. That's how actually the parliamentarians became aware of the issue, and they said we must do this and we must do that. So yeah, so we don't know. I was listening to the person who was doing the analysis of it. I think he's a counsel. or somebody in the diplomatic counsel, I mean a lawyer in the diplomatic field. And you're saying there are a number of issues. We really don't know her story. All we've heard is that she's been through trial and she's been convicted. So there are many stories out there. Some say that she partially knew, others are saying she's completely innocent, and others saying she's guilty. Sadly, the issue with possession of drugs is really hard. In fact, that's why we always tell people to defend, that you don't carry people's bags. As Queen Mo said, you don't touch anything when you're traveling from point A to B. You refuse completely because you never know what's going to happen. And some of these countries, because the drug issue is so serious, they actually are very, very harsh on that type of situation. So we do know that apparently there's somebody who has been arrested in Kenya in line with this case. Um, so we don't know what information is really there. So I think the person was basically saying that those are our options. We hope that at least we can bring her home so that she serves a life sentence here if she is guilty. But we really can't try her again. So they would release her to us, to Kenya, so that she could serve her sentence here, which would be a life sentence, because we stopped capital punishment. It's no longer part of our law. So that's the sad situation. We do know that the other Kenyans suffering in custody. We do know of somebody else in Saudi Arabia called Steve. There have been a lot of appeals. The mother has been on his mother is a retired journalist, Dorothy Quayle, and she's also been on the news making appeals. That situation unfolded. He went to Saudi Arabia to work. It's sort of like a gap year. After he finished his school, he decided to go to Saudi Arabia to work so that he could maybe raise some money to go to university. But what happened is that where he was working in this place, and he was, he got into a tussle with the owner's son, who was his friend. And the owner's son took a sharp object, and so they were fighting. So he wrested it. This is my understanding of the story. He wrested it out of the hand of the assailant, or rather the owner's son, and he eventually, in the course of the tussle, the owner's son he got injured. He wrested the sharp object from the owner's son, and he also was defending himself, and he knifed he used the weapon against in self-defense, and unfortunately the owner's son passed away. He was arrested and he went through the normal court. He was convicted of manslaughter and sentenced to like 6 years. But the widow of this young man was not satisfied, and she had him tried again through the Sharia court.
Mm-hmm.
Sharia court, you're found guilty, it's firing squad.
Wow.
Yeah, so we've been making appeals. There have been stays. Kenyans have been really good. They've been sending money from all over. Yeah, but she's expected to raise 150 million Kenya shillings. And every
Wow.
time there's a
Yes.
delay, every time there's a delay or lifting of the date of execution, she
Mm.
has to pay the mother has to pay
So
some
there's a
sort of
fine.
fine,
Yeah.
about
Mm-hmm.
2 million. So
Wow.
so that those funds are still being raised. So those are the two Kenyans we know about. But I know of another case where I saw it in the newspaper, where this lady, she went to work as a hairdresser
Mm-hmm.
in Iraq. Is it Iraq or Iran? One of them,
Mm-hmm.
one of the eyes. And she went to work there as a hairdresser. Eventually, she was taken out of the hairdresser's saloon and taken in as a house worker. Um, she was accused of stealing. She went through court. They didn't they found she was acquitted, and she ran away. After that, she ran away, but she was facing a lot of abuse in that home, and so she ran away. She's not been seen. So her family is looking for her. Her husband and family are looking for her. She has not returned home. and she's nowhere to be seen. So we don't know what has happened to her. So basically, as Queen Mo was saying, that our economy is exporting workers, but we're exporting them to very, very dangerous places.
Mm-hmm.
Their lifestyle, the way they view life, uh, is very different from the way we view life. We might be very desperate, but we need to be careful we're not sending our loved ones into danger. We saw that
Mm-hmm.
case of Myanmar again. The people are stranded in Myanmar. Kenyans are stranded in
Oh
Myanmar. They went
yes,
there,
so many
yeah,
Kenyans. They went there
and there's no
actually, yeah,
work.
to get work, and then they're being forced to con people, to fraud, to do fraud, credit card fraud on people in Western countries. They're being forced to do that.
Yeah,
And they have targets
yeah,
that they have to meet. And if they don't meet those targets, they don't get to eat or to sleep. So they work like 24 hours non-stop. Some of them have not eaten for days. Yeah.
yeah. It's so sad. Let's not export our young people. Let's try
Hmm.
to find. Uh, Maureen, I don't know how your chair has gone. You're out of focus.
Yeah.
What is
I
happening?
just realized that I needed to charge. Oh, really? I was out of focus. Sorry. I realized my computer was just about to go off.
Oh, okay. I
You
just saw
thought I-
you. Yeah, it
you
was
just
flash. Are you? Yeah,
you thought I had gone to
yeah.
Myanmar. Huh? I'd been abducted to
It's actually
Myanmar.
very serious. Mm.
It
Yeah, it's
is
very
serious.
serious.
It is.
Even the
I actually
injury
lost a
that
relative. I lost a relative in
somebody.
Thailand. Yeah, for the same reason. Some of them are even going and losing their body parts. Uh-oh. Now your internet has hanged, Susan. Oh no. Oh, this is
Yeah,
terrible.
I can hear you.
Your internet
Can you
hanged.
hear me?
Okay, now it's okay now.
Can
Yeah,
you hear
you're
me?
good. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
So you're saying?
Yeah, it's actually a very unfortunate thing, and we can see our youth are so desperate. And that
Yeah.
that report that was showing that they're not violent, it's a sign of what is happening, and that's why they're
Yeah.
out in the streets. We're finding the help is not working. Not all the children have got their money for school, so
Oh,
they're being
okay.
forced to do menial jobs to survive,
Yeah.
and these are
Mm-hmm.
university students. It's not working. SHA is not working. Although they're saying it's working, we know it's not. We know the rural and urban private hospitals have said we're not. You come under SHA, you have to pay cash.
Yes.
The
And you know who is benefiting? I was telling you this earlier today, is some of the private doctors are really benefiting from this, you know?
CVS has
Your voice, your
certain,
sound again, your sound is
but they don't.
disappearing.
I think people don't really don't have a. Yeah, yeah, okay. I think people don't want to get caught up in the mess because it's a mess. We do know
Mm-hmm.
that some money was paid, but we do know that it was not paid in a very transparent or accountable manner. So again, it's been questioned. So definitely any opportunity to do things not so correctly seems to be what we're dealing with.
Yeah.
Which is something of a concern,
Yeah.
as a nation,
Mm-hmm.
and even when we look at the way the systems are running, we should be really concerned about the dominance of the executive. The House committees were chosen in the House. And I was listening to a political show in Kenya. I think it was one of on Citizen.
Mm-hmm.
And
KTN.
basically, the MPs
Oh, Citizen.
are the
Okay. Mm-hmm.
executive. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The executive who chooses who's going to be the chair of each committee. And if you try to challenge, you can be
Yes.
whipped. So that again,
Mm-hmm.
you see that the parliament is its own institution, but the executive is determining who is going to be the chair of each institution. And what is even more absurd now is that I was reading this article, and it talks about, and it's by Barack Mluka. He says that ODM has taken over the leadership of Parliament's most critical organs. And one is the Public Accounts Committee, which is usually led by the minority. It's the minority who should have that leadership. And then the other one is the Budget and Appropriations Committee, which is usually led by the majority. The chair is usually a majority. Now, what is the conundrum? The conundrum is that both the Public Accounts Committee, which is an oversight committee, is now being led by ODM, as is the Budget and Appropriations Committee. And the Budget and these are two. One is supposed to be watching the other one. You know, the Budget and Appropriations Committee is supposed to be the one is responsible for helping government to make the national budget. So here is ODM chairing that committee that's helping the government make the national budget, and it's also chairing the committee that's supposed to be oversighting what has been done. This, the absurdity of it all, and this is one of the issues that we were trying to raise about the effects of this agreement between Ruto and Raila. What is doing, the mess it's creating in Parliament. Anybody who is not seen to have a mind of their own is not a chairperson, particularly those who are associated with the former deputy president. They all lost their chairman positions. And don't forget that the former deputy president was in the majority. So for instance, the Budget and Appropriations Committee was Dean Dinyoro, if I'm not wrong. He was one of the people. He's no longer there, and they've replaced the two major seats. The other thing I want us to pay attention to is who is the cabinet secretary for the treasury. It's an ODM person. So the ones that have something to do with money, it seems like they're all under ODM. So this is the parliament we have, where the executive controls what is happening in parliament, and all the major houses of all the major committees are actually they're even the ones that are supposed to have oversight, where the minority is supposed to be there. That's not happening. It's not happening. So we have a parliament which literally is just a rubber stamp to the executive. So we need to be really, really concerned about that as Kenyans. We need to be concerned. That means we need to find ways of making sure our voice is heard, of making sure that we do not allow Parliament to be manipulated, that we encourage our members of Parliament to do their job right. The worst thing about it is when we're talking about the economy, this is my final point on this. I was listening to some others, some politicians talking. They're saying the business of the politicians is to create spaces for them to do government with the biggest to do business with the biggest business partner, and the biggest business partner is government. So literally they're in the house doing business with government. They're the ones doing the tenders, they're the ones doing this, they're the ones doing that. And which is why they don't want to pass what they call the Conflict of Interest Act bill. They don't want to go through it. They don't want to develop it. They don't want to pass the act, because it will ensure that they cannot trade. They cannot trade. They cannot participate. They cannot procure things for
They can't take
the government.
advantage through their wives and their children.
Yeah, they
And
can't.
the
They don't
business
want to pass it.
partners. Yeah.
They don't want to pass it. They don't want to pass it. So it's really
Corruption is
quite a,
deeply rooted. Deep.
yeah.
It
It's
really
very
is.
serious. In
Mm-hmm.
fact, it's one of the things that is making the systems not work. And it be anywhere in the world where corruption comes to play, it just
Mm-hmm.
increases the costs of doing anything.
Oh, yeah.
Like when we talk about wastage, the cost of one item, I think, in fact, this is one of the things I think they found out even when they're doing the what's her name called, the Auditor General, and the
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
budget
Controller of budget.
controller of
Mm-hmm.
budget.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean that the same commodity would cost differently. The same commodity could cost differently. And the difference is the variation in prices was enormous. And of course,
Their
it's
jobs are
loaded up, so
difficult.
that's
Yeah,
how that's how
their
the that's how the
jobs.
corruption is. Hmm.
Yeah.
So that's how the
Isn't that
corruption
what
is done.
Elon Musk is uncovering through Dodge? The same thing is happening in the West. It's still happening in America. Yes. They are found in America. Didn't he say that there are over 2 million people, 2 million federal workers actually who are actually not alive, but are because they're not registered as not alive or not there, not whatever. So the government is giving money for these people. Yeah. When there's, like, for example, when there was a COVID thing, yeah, when there was COVID and the government was actually giving money out, those people were counted. Where does that money go? Corruption is all over the world. It's everywhere. It's endemic. It's really endemic, and it's only countries like China, where they have very, very strong laws and very serious capital punishment for people who are corrupt, where it will not thrive. Otherwise, in other countries, it's like countries are run with through corruption. But as I continue with, as we continue with the issue of diplomacy, we can't forget the Dutch government confirmed receiving over 300 emails from Kenyans opposing the planned monarch's visit. And yet he still visited. He still visited. Yeah. The Dutch Ministry of Foreign Affairs, speaking on behalf of the Government of Information Service. Let me share my screen with you guys so that you can see. Where is it? Present. Uh, Sorry, I'm always rather slow here, but eventually we'll get there. Yeah. All right. So we have the Dutch government. This is Easterly Voice. Easterly is a newspaper I really like. Actually, it's quite an interesting one. Dutch government confirms receiving over 300 emails from Kenyans opposing the planned monarch's visit. And why were Kenyans opposing the monarch's visit? Okay, the Dutch Ministry of Foreign Affairs, speaking on behalf of the Government Information Service, acknowledged awareness of the reported human rights violations in Kenya, and they confirmed receiving over 300 emails from Kenyans requesting the cancellation of a planned state visit by His Majesty King Willem Alexander and Her Majesty Queen Maxima from March 18th, which is today, to March 20th, which is, I believe, on Friday. And the surge of appeals follows the Royal House of the Netherlands announcement last week that the 3-day visit at the invitation of President Ruto. Okay. And so basically, the Kenyans were citing concerns over the country's current state of affairs, including human rights violations, abductions, enforced disappearances of government critics and opposition figures from neighboring countries. So there's a Dutch public broadcaster, the media, that reported that the Foreign Affairs Ministry acknowledged the wave of emails, but they clarified that the visit remains on schedule, and they emphasized its diplomatic importance as a platform to address these concerns. Okay. So the Dutch Ministry of Foreign Affairs wrote a written response, and they spoke on behalf of the Government Information Service, acknowledging awareness of the reported human rights violations in Kenya and emphasizing that the Netherlands regularly speaks out against such abuses, both publicly and in engagements with Kenyan authorities. Yeah. So basically, the visit was going to go on as scheduled, guys. Doesn't matter what Kenyans say. What these guys want to do, they want to do. There's much more at stake for the government, and they have to look at what is relevant to them. And what's relevant to them is to make sure that their ambassador visits that their king visits the country, and that whatever it is that they're interested in Kenya for, because Kenya is strategically located, as we know. And it continues on, though, here, where they were saying that the visit must not ignore human rights. Okay. And these are other reports such as that which I'm sharing with you. They were talking about solidarity, the issue about the taxes. But you see, on the other hand, this is the country, the Netherlands, where if you recall, you guys, the farmers themselves were revolting against what they call nitrogen wars. Yeah, the Dutch farmers revolted, and it turned the nation, like they say, upside down. And there was a time, I believe it was the Netherlands and also Canada, where the farmers were revolting. And they went on the streets and they turned, they actually set places ablaze. They did all kinds of things. They were not even, can we say, what can we say? They were not kind and, should I say, they were not non-violent, should I say, like Kenyans. They were actually violent. But the government actually used the police to stop, just to stop, to quell it. But on the other hand, the way that we handle things is a bit different. But now the Dutch king actually is in town, and apparently he has he has told, according to MSN, Dutch king tells William Ruto to respect human rights. Kenyans want their voices heard. Yeah, so here he is. This is the Dutch king right here. You see him there? So the king, Willem Alexander of the Netherlands, currently on a 3-day state visit to Kenya, emphasized the shared aspirations of both nations for good governance, human rights, and accountability. And if you look at that picture, you see how President Ruto is so happy to receive him. He's a happy camper, very happy to receive the Netherlands king. And also, Rachel is at the back with the Queen, and they're looking like they have the biggest smiles in the world. But they were quoted as saying, the Dutch monarch, that the people of Kenya, like those in the Netherlands, want their rights as free citizens to be respected and their voices heard. And he said that he is pleased. I am pleased that our strong relationship allows us to focus on key issues such as human rights, good governance, and accountability during this visit. And he said that these agreements will enhance Dutch investments in Kenya. Or they were talking about getting into some sort of agreements in the areas of agriculture, trade and investment, industrialization, tourism, climate action, regional security, and people to people connections. And they believe that the agreement will enhance Dutch investments in Kenya and strengthen agricultural and industrial transformation and drive infrastructural development, blah, 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 blah. The same old diplomatic lingua talk. So they also said that the Netherlands is one of Kenya's most significant trading partners in Europe. This is President Ruto, who acknowledged that the Netherlands is one of Kenya's most significant trading partners. And so he said that we value this partnership, committed to strengthening our ties, expanding economic opportunities, fostering sustainable collaborations that drive progress in both nations. Okay, so basically, they're talking, at a very high level. Really, what I would say is a lot of really nothing, except that they are just interested in ensuring that they get what they get, from the country. But the question is, let us not forget, that the Dutch farmers themselves revolted, and there was a crisis over the issue of pollution led by the farmer trucks and the diesel trucks. And they wanted them to stop using so many diesel trucks. They wanted them to the government of the Netherlands wanted the farmers to put down their animals, to put down their cattle. And you see, the Netherlands, as small as it is one of the biggest feeders of the world in terms of dairy industry. One of the things that was quite interesting to see and to read is that Mama Rachel reintroduced free milk in schools, I believe in primary schools. Yeah. And to me, that seems a little bit suspect, because my question is, how come it's coinciding with the visit of the King of the Netherlands? Does it mean that those children are going to be drinking the reconstituted milk called Nido that comes from the Netherlands? Or are they going to be drinking Kenyan farmers' milk? Yeah. Where is that milk going to be coming from? Is it going to be coming from the Netherlands? You see, most of these people are just about themselves. It's just about trade. It's all about trade, because apparently the Netherlands has the biggest embassy in Kenya and the biggest project in Kenya, and it's serving not the Dutch government in Kenya. It's not just serving Kenya, it is serving other regions. And apparently there was an office that was closed in the region of Africa, some region in Africa, and all of their workers are right here in Kenya. So do you think that they're going to be, wanting to have any sort of problem with Ruto? I don't think so. So I think sometimes Kenyans, when we have issues, let us not take them, as much as we want to express our displeasure, it doesn't really help to take them over to TikTok and talk to the Dutch president or the king or whoever they are. We have to. The solutions will come from ourselves internally, from us, not from them, because in the end, everybody is just looking out for their own interests. That's just it. Yeah, that's just it. Okay, I think for me, that's all I have to say for today. Although there's a lot more to say, but I think I'm just going to stop it there. But Susan, if you have anything else to say before we close off. Susan, are you there? Yeah.
Yeah,
Anything?
yes, I am. Yeah, I was just going to add, when you're talking about diplomacy and you're talking about our foreign policy, which is causing a lot of some of the things that have been done have really aggravated our neighbors and other nations. Having the RSF, that is the Rapid Support Forces of Sudan, come to Kenya and announce a parallel government has really annoyed uh, the Sudanese armed forces, who are actually in charge in the Sudan. And what they've done is they've stopped the importation of Kenyan tea. So the Kenyan tea farmers are up in arms in Kenya because it's been stopped. They were sending over some tea, and they've said they're not buying from Kenya. So some of the decisions we've made are really affecting, people. And this is an export. We are not exporting enough, by the way, and that's one of the reasons. That's one of the things that is impacting our economy negatively, because we are not exporting enough. We're importing, but we're not exporting enough. And when that opportunity is there, and look at the perhaps the whole group of community of tea farmers in Kenya, how many people are affected by that loss of potential loss of income. So it means I don't think that's going to be something that's going to be very easy to negotiate, because our government has offended the the leaders of a different nation, and a trading nation, and we are major suppliers, I think, to the Sudan of tea. So some of these things that have happened, it just shows you. In fact, I was listening to somebody saying some of the things that one thing that some of the things Kenya Kwanza did before the 2022 elections was to sign charters with every county and the special interest groups, to tell each of them what to expect, coming up with like a contract to say, for this county, this is what you want, this is what we'll give you, and that sort of thing. Right now, the deputy president is working so hard to go through those charters and to see where the Kenya Kwanza government is in terms of meeting those requirements. They're at the halfway mark, and so he's working hard on that, and not, the issue of unkept promises is the song of Kenyans, and now the expectations are being thwarted further. The frustrations are further for all the tea farmers, because we know tea is grown in different parts of this nation, different parts of this nation. And Rift Valley, some sections of Rift Valley are affected. Some sections of, I'm talking about the provinces, of course, the Rift Valley province and the Central province and other areas are affected, because now their tea is not being bought. It's stranded. It's stopped. It's not going into the country, so they can't expect their payment. So that is something, again, diplomacy, foreign policy is really, really expensive. Is very, very important. Getting the right people to control this, getting the right policies, really understand some of these issues is important. I think, again, perhaps that was an economic choice that was made by a group of individuals, or if the Sudanese allegation that our president is engaged in a gold, in the gold trade with the RSF, uh, then maybe it would explain such a rash decision. Because I think Kenyans today are asking, why did that happen? We have never done that. We have been the country that has encouraged people to have peace talks, but we've never really taken the side on one of the warring factions. We are the ones who have been encouraging peace talks. So I just thought that that's an important thing, and just to see. There was an article again in the newspaper. I don't have it. I was talking about the impact of our poor foreign policy on our trade. on our on our trade, and it seems to be substantive enough for an article to be written about it.
I'm
You're
telling you,
on mute.
diplomacy. Can you not hear me? Can you hear me now? You can't hear me. Can you hear me? Okay, good.
Yes, I can hear you
Yeah,
now. Mm.
diplomacy is so important. And actually, we need to find out what is the impact of Kenya's diplomatic stance with other countries. What is the impact on our economy? That is very interesting. That's a very interesting angle, Susan. Yeah, I did take a look at that, but I actually didn't look at it in depth. It's something that we should look into. How does that impact on us, economically? When you open your mouth, our mouths are very important things, and documents that we sign, very important. Yeah. You can either make it or break it. So, anyway, I'm not going to add anything to that, Susan. I think you've wrapped up very nicely. Thank you guys so much for watching. We've seen you coming in and out of our live show. Please remember to thumbs up our video and remember to subscribe to African Queen Mo Cardiff. If you want to watch some more, we're going to be back again tomorrow with geopolitics. Yeah, today was a made up show for yesterday, so tomorrow we're back with geopolitics, and this time we will be here for you. So look forward to seeing you, and thank you very much for your time, and have a good evening. Goodbye from me and Susan. Kwaheri, to do's, bye bye. Thank you, Susan.